we rolling?
Yep.
This is Bo and Huck. I can't tell who is who. But they're both very cute. They're 9-month-old Boston Terrier brothers, and they're from the same litter. They get along great, except for when they're overexcited, and they have had some fights where we have to pull them, the guardians have had to pull them apart, otherwise they will probably kill themselves. But the rest of the time they're boys, as you can see in the hair. So a lot of what we went over in the session is adding rules and structure. I want the guardians to assume the leadership position. I think the big problem overall is the dogs get overexcited in certain capacities. They think they have the same authority of their peers with their guardians, and because they think they're peers, they think that they should be looking out and in charge of security. And so when one dog's excited and the other dog is excited and they both think they're handling security, that's when a lot of these fights have happened. So we've identified areas, or the guardians have identified activities that ramp them up. When somebody comes to the door, when they're going out to the backyard, sometimes if there's a special toy or food present or something along those lines. So basically what we want to do, hey buddy, is we want to make sure that we are practicing each one of those activities with each dog individually and breaking it down into individual steps. So for the door, for example, we go to the door, and this is to go in the backyard. I suggested a number of rules for the guardians to incorporate to start to have these guys start to see and identify as being in a follower position, and the humans as the leader. One of the rules is that they have to sit before we let them in or out of the door. Now, because they fought in the backyard, the guardians right now are not letting them out together. And one of the questions is, when can they get back to this? What I'd like them to do is go to the door with one dog individually. At first, the rule is the dog has to sit before we let it in or out of the door. As soon as it sits, we open the door and let it out. After we've gotten to the point where the dog's going and sitting at the door consistently, then what I would do is go to the door, and then this is what I started talking about earlier, breaking down the activity into individual steps. So my first step might be simply reaching for the handle of the sliding door to the back of the house. I just reach for it and then put my hand down. Reach for it, put my hand down. At first the dog is going to get up out of its sit because it's going to anticipate the door opening. And I keep on reaching and breaking that into that one individual step until the dog stays in a sit and is completely calm. The next step would be maybe to hit the latch. And as soon as you hit the latch, you'll see the dog's ears come up, you see the energy level come up, and sometimes they get out of a sit. Anytime they get out of a sit, we tell them to sit again, and then we repeat the process. And we have to go through that step over and over until that dog is very calm and knows the behavior that's expected for that step. Next step is to open it just a crack. And then just that breaking the seal, now we have the rush of air in from outside and the sound of breaking that crack. If the dog gets up, we close the door, tell the dog to sit, and repeat that process. We keep on going through this until we can eventually open the door and the dog stays at a sit and doesn't go out the door until we give it a release word. Now, because we have two dogs here, I would give them, and they're being very good right now, I would give them each a separate command word to go outside. At first, we're going to practice this with the dogs one at a time until we can get the dogs to be able to be completely calm throughout the process. And when we get to the point where the dogs are not overexcited about the door and all the other things that, dogs on TV and all these other things, then I would start practicing them together. But we're going to make sure that we're setting them up for success. We're going to take them to doggy daycare first that day. Or take them for a long walk. We're going to make sure that there isn't a concert going on in the neighborhood where there's a lot of sounds, or the neighbor isn't putting up a fence, or the kids aren't screaming. All those things are going to contribute to excitement. And again, I think excitement is one of the key causes for these guys to have redirected aggression towards one another. So the other activities that we talked about were, delaying gratification by doing things like adding structure to petting the dogs with a purpose. Anytime the dog jumps up on us, instead of petting the dog or nudging us with their nose, instead of petting them when they do that, we're going to tell them to sit. As soon as they sit, we're going to pet them under their chin. When a dog feels good about himself, the nose is parallel to the ground or tilted upward. So if we just get in a habit of petting him on the chin like this, you see how we can facilitate that nose up orientation. And that means the dog feels good about that particular activity. We're also going to engage in what I call passive training. So every time the dog comes to us, we're going to pet the dog and say the word come, even if we didn't call them. Every time the dog sits, we're going to pet it and say sit. Every time it lays down near us, we're going to pet it and say down. By doing this enough, after a while, the dog starts to associate the command with the command word and the command action. And then when we give the command word after or before the fact, the dog comes back to us seeking that reward. For the dog bed, we're going to give it a designation by tossing a dog treat onto it. As soon as the dog walks over and gobbles up that treat, we're going to say Wrigley. I think is the word that we're using for now, but I get the feeling we may change it. And then the other way to do it is leave a treat on the dog bed and just observe. When the dog goes over and discovers it, we don't point it out. When the dog discovers it, then we just go over and we just say the word Wrigley. The other way is I could take a treat, lead the dog over, put it in a sit or a down position, and then pop the treat in its mouth and say Wrigley. Anytime we're using a treat, we want to make sure we're saying the command word the same second the treat goes into the dog's mouth, not before. We're going to practice the focus exercise, as I showed. And the focus exercise, at first, it's 1 second for the movement off the knee up to about 8 inches in front of our nose. And then we're going to travel straight towards the dog's face to maintain eye contact, or facial contact, I should say, with us. Then eventually we're going to start going to 2 seconds on that second movement. Then we're going to work our way up to 20 seconds. Thank you, buddy. When we get up to 20 seconds, then we should have a more reliable way of redirecting the dogs. And so if you see the dogs together and one of them gets stiff or the breathing starts getting really heavy, they stare, especially with the lowered head. You see it looking sideways with a lot of white in the eye. We call that whale eye. They freeze in place. Those are all signs, and we're going to watch out for those. When we see those, that would be a great way to give the dog the focus exercise or to redirect them or call them to us. Also, we're not going to let one of them stick its chin over the other dog's back. That's kind of a way of dominating. When one dog has a toy or a bone, we're gonna be the ones that are going to intercede. We're not going to let that dog go and snatch the bone from the other dog. If the more that the dog sees us in the leadership position, the less they think they have to do it themselves. We're also going to look for things that we can do where the dogs have to develop self-control, such as teaching the dog to balance a treat on their nose. Did I get a phone call?
No, it's your create road to successor session now, and I'm like, why is this still on here and it's not going away?
Oh, that's okay. If I get a phone call, you just swipe up, it'll go away. We're also going to do teach the dog to stay. Now, when we do the stay, we're going to teach it for the 3 Ds. First, for duration, working our way up to 5 minutes very gradually, progressively. We're going to do this stay multiple times a day. Remember at first to try to keep it to 1, 2, or 3 minute stay for the duration. If the dog starts losing interest when we get to 2 or 3 minutes, we're probably pushing too long at first. These guys are young, and their neurons will get tired, and they'll just simply not be they won't have the ability to continue. By being gradual, then eventually we'll be able to get to the point where they can stay for 5 minutes while we're just sitting right in front of them. Next one is we're going to go for duration, or for distance. We're going to start walking away a step and come back. And then we'll eventually do it for distractions where we have a dog on TV or things along those lines. I would like each dog to have its own unique release word. Never use the word okay. I use break and release. And so this way we can release the dogs independently without releasing one without releasing the other. And again, those are both exercises that are going to be much more effective if you get a lot of momentum. So doing them multiple times a day. I'd like to practice the focus, each guardian, with each dog twice a day. And then with the stay exercise, that's one that you just really want to sprinkle out throughout the day. You have a minute, just pull out a couple treats and practice the stay. And go at their own pace. Just because one dog is at a certain distance or time doesn't mean the other dog has to be at the same place. We want them to go at their own pace and build up on their confidence and their success so that they feel good about the exercise and they know how to execute it. Let's see. We're going to practice answering the door. And I would do this with the dogs individually. And what I would do is when the guardians are coming home, text each other. Hey, let's do the door exercise. Okay, I'll be there in 5 minutes. We wash our hands. We put up whatever we're working on so that we can give our dog our full and undivided attention and not be rushed. We're going to feed the dogs here in a minute, and we're going to start feeding the dogs in a structured way. These guys do not have problems with food, and they eat at the same time. But by simply controlling the food and having the human eat first and then letting the dogs eat one at a time, we can help build in a little bit of self-control. And because this is an activity we're going to do over and over again, it's a great way to just have a little mini dog obedience session without even really thinking about it every day. Let me see what else. I would like to see you guys trying to teach them some more tricks. You guys have done a really good job of that. YouTube is a great resource. There's a lot of these dog trainers on there. Oh, for the stay, if you want to look up the YouTube video, the guy that I got the technique from, it's called Teaching Any Dog the Perfect Stay. And the guy has a lot of great techniques. I can't remember his name, but a lot of different things there you can find. Teaching your dog to leave it, teaching your dog to calm down, things along those lines. Other rules: no furniture for at least 30 days or as long as these are going on. And then once that's passed, then the dogs can be on the furniture, but only with permission, with an invitation, and only for good behavior. I think I'm probably leaving out a couple things, and you're antsy to go eat. I know we're going to feed you here in a second, buddy. But this is the roadmap to success for Bo and Huck. Remember, everything you do trains your dog, only sometimes you mean it.